Hey, I'm Dr. Eric Fishon, here to talk to you about the hidden burden. What self advocacy actually requires when you're looking for accommodations in secondary education. See, when you're in regular school and secondary school, and both junior high and high school, you have things called IEPs, 504s. Things are planned for you. It's really, really cool. Schools are getting much better at it, especially here in New York State and throughout the country. They're planned, people fight for them. There's boards of education. It's baked into your education once you finally do the hard work in the beginning. But see, then something happens after 12th grade. You're let out into the world, and there's no roadmap that's given to you. Because your next step in higher education and college, you have to self advocate for yourself. You have to explain what your disability is. When you can't see it, feel it, or touch it, that's an invisible disability. Neurodivergent and those disabilities as well come up all the time. And sometimes having to prove it makes you feel unworthy. You know, let's use an example. For lack of a better term, let's say her name is Maya. She's not a hypothetical, she's a composite of real students I've met, read about, and advocate alongside, and even part of it's me. She's brilliant. She's a first generation doctoral student, a healthcare worker, a mother, and a person of really strong faith. She applied to a fully online doctoral program because she believed the promise: affordable, accessible, and accredited. She logged in full of hope. And then she asked a question because she is a neurodivergent learner with an invisible disability. What accommodations exist for students with disabilities in this program? Do you hear that? That was the silence that followed. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was structural. See, here's what accommodations is supposed to look like. Like institutions like the University of Florida, Southeastern Baptist Theological Society, just to name a few, and institutions that take disabilities seriously. There's like an actual human process out there. You know, a student sits with an accessibility specialist, maps out their specific barriers, and receives a clear, documented plan. Professors are notified, formats are adjusted, and the semester doesn't begin until the student has what they need to actually participate. And the accommodation is not a gift, it's so that they can be on a level playing field. Now, it's not perfect anywhere, but it exists. And its existence alone says something. You belong here. We want you here. You deserve to be here. Now, here's the paradox that should stop all of us cold in our tracks. To receive an accommodation like Maya, you must do the following. You must, one, navigate complex institutional websites with no guide that is hidden deep within it just for ADA to say you had it done. You need to gather medical and psychological documentation on your own. You need to schedule and attend an intake interview with a complete stranger if they indeed return your call or information. You need to verbally justify your disability out loud to someone she just met. For example, when we're talking about Maya, then you have to negotiate with what is reasonable, because there's certain universities that use that word reasonable to get away with saying, well, your accommodations need to be reasonable and not disrupt, don't be a disruptor, the program. And then, don't forget, you need to repeat that entire process every single semester. Now, the system designed to support students who struggle with complex, multi-step tasks is in itself a complex, multi-step task. See, the student must be perfect in managing their disability, but the institution is allowed to be careless in managing its responsibility. That's not a bug in the system. That's a bug in the design. And it gets worse with faith-based spaces. When an institution wraps itself in the mission, in the language of justice, compassion, and the dignity of every person made in the image of God, and then builds an online program with no proactive accessibility infrastructures, that's not an oversight. That's what we call a contradiction. And it costs people their degrees, their health, and sometimes their belief that they weren't meant to be there. And that's a horrible feeling to have. An online program that does not build accommodations into its architecture is not accessible. It's extractive. It profits from the resilience of disabled students while asking them to carry out the course that the institution refuses to bear. So what does real leadership actually look like? Well, it's accessibility baked into the course design, universal design, not bolted after a grievance that you have to make. It's faculty that's trained to offer flexibility before it's even requested. Like Curb Effect, when they made, and the ADA made, accessibility for people with disabilities, for example, ramps that you see in the streets and the curb, the reason why they call it curb appeal is because everyone could benefit from it. The UPS workers, postal workers, people with carriages use it to get easily on the sidewalk. Well, it wasn't originally meant for that. It was meant for people in wheelchairs and with disabilities. But the curb appeal is that everybody can benefit. The same thing goes into universal design with people with disabilities, because if you look at most of these accommodations, it can actually help everybody. Because we're not asking for a lot. The question at the ask of every start of the semester is, what do you need to be fully here? A disability service office that reaches out, not the one that waits in silence for the right form to arrive. And some of the forms say, if it's a mental illness, that doesn't justify having an accommodation because that could be temporary. Did you hear that? Temporary? We won't talk about that. This is not an extra. This is not a charity. This is the floor, not the ceiling. To students with disabilities, your struggle is not a personal failing. It is an evidence that the system was not built with you in mind originally. You're not asking for special treatment. You're asking for equal footing. To institutions, you cannot preach while practicing neglect. You cannot prepare for the next generation of healthcare leaders while ignoring the most basic principles of a disability equity in your own online classrooms. And to accreditors and ranking agencies, stop ranking just based upon what's most affordable, who graduates the most, as many people that are there. Stop rating the programs just on the cost and convenience. Why don't you ask the harder questions? Are they actually accessible to people with disabilities? Who is being quietly filtered out? Why are they being filtered out? I know it might not be flashy for the U.S. News and World Reports, and it might not help those institutions. But man, do you know what the percentage of people and the buying power of people with disabilities are in the United States? Now remember Maya, the person I was just telling you about? She's still out there. She's waiting for an answer to a question that should have never been met with silence. A degree that is only realistically accessible to the healthiest, most resourced, most neurotypical students, that's not a degree in leadership. It's an expensive filter, and the voices is silence are exactly the ones we most need in the room. See the burden, name it, and then build something better. I'm Dr. Eric Fishon, reminding you a disability is not an inability. It's your greatest superpower. Together we can make a difference where an accommodation is not looked as a gift. It's to be on a level playing field, because doesn't everybody deserve to get their dream of a college education without anxiety, without being scared, without shaking in their car, without scared of that camera, that what's going to happen, what people are going to see on the other side of the screen. Here's a little note for you. Just because we're on online education doesn't mean that we have everything afforded to us on the other side of that computer and that we don't need an accommodation. We are real people. We're still paying you as well. We deserve to be heard as well. Hit the like button. Please share. Let's help advocate for others.